There's also an open question about whether the officials involved here will be prosecuted, those who requested the legal authorizations for these techniques, the lawyers who themselves authored the memos, or anyone who gave the actual go-ahead to use these techniques, basing their permission on the memos. Could they still be investigated and prosecuted? Despite assurances from the White House, despite those assurances from Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel and Press Secretary Robert Gibbs, the White House is not the same thing as the Justice Department. And within the Justice Department, new reporting suggests that a very different discussion is underway. This is big news. Newsweek's Michael Isikoff and Evan Thomas are reporting tonight that Attorney General Eric Holder at the Justice Department is not at all settled on the White House's conclusions about not prosecuting Bush administration officials and maybe even CIA officers who acted outside the bounds of the torture memos. The White House says no prosecutions. The Justice Department is reportedly undecided. Quote, Attorney General Holder is seriously considering appointing an outside counsel to investigate whether CIA interrogators exceeded legal boundaries and whether Bush administration officials broke the law by giving the CIA permission to torture in the first place. Wow. So even if President Obama doesn't want to prosecute, his Attorney General might? Joining us now is Newsweek's Michael Isikoff. His report appears in the latest issue of Newsweek's. Michael, thanks very much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Great to be with you, Rachel.
Based on your reporting, it appears that the White House and the Department of Justice may be on very different pages when it comes to the question of prosecutions and torture. Is that what you see going on inside the Obama administration?
Well, I have to say, they should be on different pages. Just listening to some of the comments in the last few days, particularly from Rahm Emanuel and Robert Gibbs, about how the president is focused on looking forward, not backward, and he's not interested in seeing these people prosecuted. You know, there's some people at the Justice Department who are listening to that and saying, that's not their decision to make. Decisions about criminal prosecutions are made by the Justice Department based on evidence, the facts and the law. And there's actually sort of a taboo about the White House meddling and dictating to the Justice Department about who should be investigated and who shouldn't. In fact, if you go and Google Justice Department White House communications, the first thing that will pop up is Justice Department guidelines that very specifically lay out the ground rules for communications between Justice Department and White House on pending criminal cases and how those communications should be handled and what role the White House has in even learning about criminal investigations, much less trying to dictate who should be investigated and who shouldn't.
So are you hearing from sources at the Justice Department when they heard Rahm Emanuel yesterday and Robert Gibbs today saying there won't be prosecutions, in essence, there was surprise, there was anger at the Justice Department?
Well, we wrote our story before they made those comments. This is a story that first appeared on the web on Saturday in the magazine that came out yesterday. But I can tell you that people at the Justice Department have been wrestling with this issue for some time. Senator Carl Levin, who incidentally has a major new report coming out tomorrow night on Defense Department interrogations and harsh interrogations and how they came about, had recommended to Holder, the Attorney General, appointing a outside lawyer, a retired federal judge, somebody to look at all the evidence here and reach conclusions as to whether or not criminal misconduct may have taken place. You know, we do report that Holder has been weighing that idea as a possibility. No hard conclusions have been reached. He hasn't definitely decided to do it. But I do know that people at the Justice Department are taking this very seriously and don't think that they take their marching orders from anybody at the White House on this issue. That's considered a no-no. By the way, there was a terrific report today in CQ. Jeff Stein reported about how Alberto Gonzales, the past Attorney General, had torpedoed a proposed criminal investigation of Jane Harman, the congresswoman, about her because she'd been caught on a wiretap talking to an Israeli agent. And Gonzales's reasons is she didn't want, the White House didn't want, they wanted Harman's backing in defending the warrantless wiretapping program. a lot of people read that and said, whoa, wait a second, Attorney General shouldn't be making a call on that basis. But that's very similar, people, to what we're hearing today about the White House saying, well, we might need some people for health care or other issues. We can't have recriminations.
Separation of powers is separation of powers, no matter who holds those particular powers or what party they're in. Michael,
Right.
I want to ask you specifically on this issue about CIA officers, not necessarily Bush administration officials. If a special counsel were going to investigate, as you report, whether CIA interrogators exceeded legal boundaries, is that a timing issue? Is that about whether or not these techniques were used, these torture techniques were used on prisoners before the memos were issued? Or is this about doing things that were beyond what the memos said they could do?
Both, actually. If you read the memos closely, there are references, or at least one reference, to a debate within the CIA and concerns that identified later by the Inspector General that some of the interrogators may have gone beyond what was authorized in the memo. So you have that. You also have the question of when the memos were written. The first one, August 1, 2002. We do know that the interrogations of Zubaida, one of those who was waterboarded 83 times, according to the memos, began before that. Zubaida was captured in March. His CIA interrogations began in late May, early June. There's a period of time that it's unclear exactly what was done and whether steps were taken, rough tactics were used prior to the authorization in the memos.
Newsweek's Michael Isikoff, this is great reporting. Thank you for reporting it. Thank you for talking to us about it. And if you start hearing which way Holder's leaning, give me a call. Thanks, Mike.
Will do.
All
You'll be
right.
the first.